Bonjour, je suis not manly, et ici le cours d'espace, je ne sais quoi. And this is Chris Kerbin going up for some orbital experience in our standard je ne sais quoi low Kerbin orbit launcher. For all the effort that our rest of our team has done, Chris here has not gotten any orbital experience yet, and he's going to need that for the longer missions where he needs to be able to do prograde and retrograde hold in SAS. So we're going to send him up for a quick jaunt into a very efficient polar orbit here, try to get him some orbital experience, and also to get some biomes for EVA reports that both Bob and Doug would have missed in an equatorial orbit. Now, for all the talk we've done about Chris here, we never really got to talk about him. So, Chris Hadfield is a fighter pilot for the Canadian Armed Forces, also since long retired. He joined the Canadian Space Agency and he spent some time commanding the International Space Station, most famous for the space oddity recording that he did up there. And Chris Kerbin here is going into a polar orbit in Chris Hadfield's honor. Look at that. This is not only going to be orbital experience for Chris Kerbin here, this is going to be eye candy experience for you. Je ne sais quoi Kerbin is awesome, including this beautiful Kerbin sunrise looking out from Chris's portal here on the Mark 1 pod. Even with Scatterer there, we have actual shading as the sun comes out from behind the clouds. Look at that. And we're going to get some biomes here, like I said, that we had missed. I gotta tell you, Kerbin is awesome, because, like, Duna's too cold, and Eve is too hot, and everywhere else is too far away. So this is all we got. Chris here is just admiring this. He's above the Arctic Sea. We're going to get some more biome readings, and that is one of Kerbin's 2 ice caps. Look at that. This is not the flat surface that stock Kerbin has either. The designers of Je ne sais quoi Kerbin took some effort to make sure that this was not just flat land up here. And if you have environmental visual enhancements installed, you can also get auroras and these high clouds you see here. But it's time for Chris to come back down because we have our next phase of milestones to achieve here, and so we're going to detach. We're going to try to land somewhere along the equator if we can. But we're going to do one more pass over polar territory here. You can even see the top of that cloud, the very, I don't know if this is the North or the South Pole. I guess that was the South Pole because we're heading north now. Look at that. Absolutely gorgeous. If you can get this planet pack installed, be sure to spend some time just to take a look around and drift. Because, well, like I just said, Kerbin is awesome. There we go. A few hours up in space. You know, in hindsight, I should have done the docking contract up here. We could have just stuck a pair of docking ports between this craft and the Probodobodine Octo here. We could have gotten the first docking. Maybe if I do this, I will try to optimize this by combining that mission into here. Anyway, we also have the re-entry particle effect installed, which is where this gorgeous re-entry trail is coming from. Bits and bobs are exploding off of the service module up there. That's why we saw the trail interrupt. Look at that. No ablator on this heat shield, but we knew that though. Being able to re-enter from low Kerbin orbit with just a heat shield was one of the design goals of the Galileo team. It is not as nice in the night time, I have to admit, but hey, it's still there. Look at that. Chris coming to a gentle landing. Parts of the service module had still survived re-entry, and not too far away from Chris will be landing. Look at that, only 18 kilometers away, just under 18 kilometers. Touchdown! There we go. Chris is now a fully experienced orbital pilot. There you go, Chris. Yeah, enjoy the limelight there. Not too far away. Also, the scatter in this version of Kerbin is climbable, and they are solid objects. So don't get the idea you can just drive through these things. This isn't the breaking ground scatter either. This is the stock scatter. You can plant flags on top of it, you can walk Kerbals on top of it, you can land on top of them. Anyway, Chris himself didn't bring back any science, but that's okay. The pod itself brought back a good 61 science from those EVA reports. Here is our master plan in the meantime, which is why we brought Chris back down. This is going to go visit the moon and Minmus. Not by itself though, not just the one piece, although I do have a cunning plan for the craft that stays in Kerbin orbit. Tucked away inside that fairing is a means to get to the moon and Minmus twice each. And you'll get to see it as soon as that opens up in just a moment. Come on. There we go. We have 4 Probodoba 9 Octo craft up there with a single Oscar fuel tank and an Ant liquid fuel engine, the most efficient engine for its size. Also, we got some solar panels and some basic science instruments on there, just enough to make landing on the moon and on Minmus worth our while. This master probe here is not going to go out to the moon or to Minmus either, but you may have noticed it has a Probodoba Rove Mate aboard there. Again, the Rove Mate has 100% detection rate for anomalies, so we brought it all the way up to 700 kilometers circular orbit. That's as high as we could go on just its own engines, but that's okay. These little probes will be able to do the rest of the trip. In the meantime, this relatively high orbit probe will act as a relay for these guys, and we'll be able to do surveys of Kerbin for anomalies. There's a few out there yet. Look at that. Trying to get lined up for the moon here. You may have noticed that I actually installed those Octos backwards, and I was able to change the control direction on those in this edition of Kerbal Space Program. So even though they were backwards, I could tell it to control backwards, and then so forwards is still forwards. There we go, ejecting out to the moon. We have 2 probes we are sending out to the moon right now. This one, I decided let's just send it into a polar orbit, and it looks like it might end up behind the moon, but that's okay. By the time we get out there, the moon will have gone about 90 degrees on its orbit, so that probe will be well within Kerbin's signal range by the time we get out there. In the meantime, the second probe is going to be on a more equatorial orbit. We're doing a plane change right at the, what looks like the ascending node. Yep, that's right, because we were pulling down on that. So we'll try to get to the moon from 2 different directions here. One of these probes is going to help us complete our last 2 milestones, and if it doesn't, well, we've got the other one as a backup. In the meantime, we're sending out 2 probes to Minmus. These will actually be able to land on Minmus, and landing on Minmus needs about 2.3 kilometers per second, which is just exactly the amount that these probes have. You have to account for Minmus's inclination, but that's okay. Getting out there is a little longer, but a little easier. It only costs a tiny more bit of delta V. And again, we've got 2 of these things heading out to Minmus, just like we got 2 of them heading out to the moon. Doing our plane change. These little probes, they got no problem with plane changes. We just need to get that sorted out there. Okay, and we got probes going in both directions. In the meantime, the science that Chris had brought home is going to get used to research that 2.5 meter fairing. We're going to need that for future plans. In the meantime, we're going to try to land on the moon. I did say try. This is our standard low Kerbin orbit launcher, but I kind of overcooked the gravity turn just a little bit. There we go. Yeah. I figured, well, let's see if this thing can get to orbit on its own. No, it was just too low in the atmosphere, and it was flying too low, and, well, it just exploded. Anyway, we tried this again with a more conservative gravity turn. We were a lot more successful with this launch. we're able to get this supposed moon lander up into low Kerbin orbit. Now, I don't know what I was thinking when I launched this craft. At one point I was thinking I really need to avoid leaving space junk in orbit if I can. It's bad enough that we got Julie's and Roberta's pods still floating up there. But that's only going to be the beginning of our Kessler Syndrome problem if we don't lock down on it quickly. This craft here, I could have gotten to low Kerbin orbit on this stage, and I could have partially ejected out to the moon on this stage. But I thought, well, let's get this thing just to the very edge where Periapsis is still within the atmosphere, and then detach it, and then see if we can't get to the moon on the rest of that craft. And if I'd have just left it at that, well, we might have had enough Delta V to land on the moon. But silly me, I decided to be dumb. You'll see in a bit. Close in orbit didn't take very much, a mere 126 meters per second out of 500. And that, plus what was on the probe, I'm pretty sure would have made it to the moon, but I was not wanting to leave that booster in orbit. So I tried to see if I could get to the moon on this. Now, I've only got 2.2 kilometers per second, which is not enough. You need at least 2.6 kilometers per second to land if you're lucky. Even worse if your inclination is off, like this one is. There was no way we were going to be able to land with that. I'm going to try again another time. In the meantime, our first two smaller probes are approaching the moon. You can barely see the crescent of the surface of the moon right there. Look at that. Once we get to Periapsis, we'll do our insertion here, and we'll be able to complete our Orbit the Moon contract, uncrewed. I try to go for the bare minimum here if I can. And there we go, we are in orbit. That by itself isn't going to do though. We haven't completed that contract yet because we need to transmit some science. Okay, look at that, we actually have a low enough PE. All we gotta do is transmit, but we got no batteries on this thing, so I end up turning the antenna to allow partial transmission. Doesn't matter if we don't get a complete science picture as long as we get something. Okay, let's get some science, temperature. Okay, transmit! Transmit, transmit, transmit. I've got that solar panel facing the sun best as I can. Just don't drift out of alignment. There we go, we got 4 science. We completed the contract. That is milestone number 19, done on day 58, our 9 minutes 13 seconds, or 9 hours 13 minutes. There we go. Now let's see if we can get milestone number 20. We're not going to be able to land on the moon with only 650 meters per second, but we can crash into it. So we begin a suborbital entry here. I want to be able to keep it on the day side so we can see what we're doing. There we go. Yeah, we're not going to land, but that's okay. As long as we can hit the moon, we're good. Timer's counting down. This is the last milestone. 20th milestone. Can we get it within day 58? Here we come. Look out, moon. And there we go. Impact! At 9 hours 39 minutes. That is the 20th milestone. Way to go, AEK, the Agência Espacial Canada. Let's count the milestones to be sure. First flight, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Come on, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, flyby 17, 18, 19, and 20 hit the moon in 58 days, 9 hours. I took a look in the forums and I compared my progress with those of my teammates, and these were the charts that we came up. My competitors, well, it looks like I beat them! There we go! Congratulations, AEK! But a lot of our competitors don't have enough data yet, and I am hoping that our competitors will post to the forums and get this updated so I can post a more accurate set of charts. Especially Photon, where are you guys? And way to go ZWSA for doing 5 on only day 1. Hopefully we'll see the rest of our teammates' progress. Until then, I'm not Manly. Fly safe.